welcome back to Bali today.
I'm so excited.
In our collection of filmmakers today, we have someone who actually is responsible for putting Indonesia into the minds of many people for the very first time, including me. So I'm really honored to introduce you to my guest, Dr. Lawrence Blair.
Hi.
Lawrence. How are you?
Good.
Thank you so much for
Pleasure.
coming. And you have a friend. You brought Dickie.
Dickie for ridiculous. That's his full name. But he's a thing called a black-capped lorikeet. He comes from West Papua. He needs a passport thicker than mine. He has to have all his right papers and everything.
I never thought of that.
And I got him off a little boy who had a cord tied so tightly around his wrist we thought we were going to lose his foot. But as it is, he's only lost one little toe. So he's not perfect like his dad.
Oh, he's adorable though. This is great. Now I understand I can see you all around in Bali with Dickie on your shoulder. Someone told me.
Well, hopefully not, but I do carry him around. Yes, when I cycle around the place, I have him on my shoulder a lot of the time because it's a shame to leave them in a cage, you know, and he is free. He could fly. There's nothing to stop him from flying away, but he still thinks I'm his dad. And it's nice to have them free as I've had them before, so they're free in the garden. But you have to put them in a cage at night so the cats don't get them.
Of course, of course. I'm a cat owner and we won't talk about that anymore,
right,
I think.
Right.
Now, I sort of, there's a misnomer here. I introduced you, and you're here with all of our filmmakers, which is true, but you're actually an anthropologist. So that's how it all began, yeah?
That's how it all began. I have a doctorate in something called psychoanthropology, which is a branch of anthropology that deals with the range of the human mind. You know, you've got physical anthropology, which is bodies. You've got social anthropology, which is people and societies. You've got paleoanthropology, which is digging up ancient bones. My field is psychoanthropology, which is why I came here in the 70s to begin making films of tribal peoples in remote communities to try and capture a way of life that would forever vanish, as it has almost done in the last 35, 40 years.
That's true.
The idea was to get to these tribal peoples before their own government or missionary groups had got to them, so you could capture a record of a timeless way of living, which now we're recognizing as quite good, you know. They maintained their forests, they maintained their animals, they lived spiritual lives, they lived without corrupting their environment, but we have wiped them out in the last 50 years. They're disappearing all over the world.
I know, it is, it's a struggle. Here in Bali, we get to see the effects of consumerism. And as an American, I feel like it's consumerism, almost like what I find in America, it almost replaces religion.
In America, they have so much materialism that they seek spirituality, and here there has been so much spirituality that they go to the other extreme of materialism. It's just a matter of balance. All over the world, historically, we see it all the time.
That's true, that's true. And I'm seeing the synthesis, which is really great, and that's what we're working for. As long as we can all start talking to each other, we'll get it, we'll get the message. Now, as I said, I had never really heard of Indonesia growing up in America until you made and released this amazing film called Ring of Fire.
Well, it is a series, and it was based on 10, really 11 years of adventuring with my brother, my late brother, who died here in Bali 15 years ago. Why? He fell down an open manhole in the street and broke his leg and died 2 days later in the hospital. I see that 15 years later we still have these hazardous walking situations here in the island of Bali, which people do fall in. But yes, we spent 12 years visiting the most remote places in Indonesia, just the two of us most of the time. So we were often in the field for as long as, well, the longest was 9 months at a time, sailing with the Bugis, tribal peoples, living amongst the cannibal Asmat of New Guinea, who were responsible for killing and eating Michael Rockefeller, as you can find out in the Ring of Fire series. We've got the whole story there.
Where do we get it? This is just purely selfish, but I want to get it and I want to watch it now.
Well, the series can be found on indonesianodyssey.co.uk.
Someone please write that down.
The book is available in all the bookshops as of quite recently. It's just been republished again. And it has a new lease of life because I was told by somebody called Yupa Ave, who really sort of booted off the tourist industry in the 80s, that the Garuda people had said that after Ring of Fire came out on international television, the visitors on Garuda to Indonesia were increased by 50%.
I believe that.
So it was just at a time in history where this long adventure of 12 years crushed into a 4-part series, attracted the attention of the whole world to a place that nobody really knew about at all, as you say.
That's true.
I rather regret that I did it now, of course.
Why? Why?
Well,
You
I
wanted
mean,
to stay here by yourself.
obviously a lot of the wonderful, quiet, idyllic places are now full of 5-star hotels. That's why.
That's true. That's true. But I know you have not just rested on your laurels. There's the next series that you're working on now.
Well, I've done quite a lot of films since then.
Oh,
I've
I'm
done
so sorry,
IMAX and Omnimax films. I've also done Baraka, that you might have heard of. I was involved with Baraka. And then recently I've done a 5-part series called Myths, Magic and Monsters, also about Indonesia, for Sky TV, in which we explore all sorts of extraordinary things. For instance, like Homo floresiensis.
Sorry, is that a plant? The Homo thingy, is it a plant?
No, it's not a plant. It's
Sorry.
an extinct form of human being.
Oh,
you see,
right.
all human beings on the earth are of one species. And the last species of human, there have been about 10 or 12 different species of human beings before us.
Oh, I read a little bit of that in Leakey, Richard Leakey, yeah?
And we thought that the last one to die out was Neanderthal man about 35,000 years ago in Europe.
In Europe,
But
yep.
then only in 2001 they have discovered the bones of about 5 different creatures in a cave in Flores, which is referred to as Homo floresiensis, or the Hobbit. And they were 1 meter tall, the adults. And so they had babies that were this big, and they were proper human beings. They hunted pygmy elephants. Well, pygmy to us, they would have been full-size elephants to them.
Oh, how fascinating.
And they would have faced enormous prehistoric pythons, 50 to 60 feet long. And they would have had Komodo dragons then, the ancestor of today's Komodo dragon, which was up to 25 feet long. So you can imagine if you were 1 meter high and you came across a dragon 7 meters long, it would have been a proper dragon. And of course they also, the interesting thing is they hunted rats. And they are the world's largest rats, even today, the Flores rat. So in this series, we went and filmed the Flores. When they're fully grown, their body is that big. With their tails, they're that big. Oh, they're perfectly charming rats.
Yeah.
They live in trees and they're vegetarians, and everybody still eats them. Those of us, you know, who are still alive, the Homo floresiensis people have gone by the wayside. So have the pygmy elephants. But for some strange reason, you and I and the giant rat of Flores are still here.
Well, this is fascinating because, of course, the way you're describing them, this could be the root of what we consider the myths of dragons and all that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is what part of this work that I do is about. A lot of creatures that in Europe are mythological animals that were recognized there before we even knew the world was round, long before they'd even discovered Indonesia. So how come they are based, it seems, on certain extraordinary creatures from this part of the world? The myths reached the Europeans through the overland spice trading route. And when you come back and you see things like Komodo dragons, and you see things like little tiny forest folk, like the miniature man of Flores, or indeed like this other wonderful thing, the world's smallest primate comes from Indonesia, and it's called a tarsier. And it was thought only 3 years ago that there were as perhaps 2 species of tarsier. But now they understand there are 12, and at least 12 and still counting. They each speak their own languages. They each by languages. They twitter at high frequency. We can't even hear them with the human ear. It has to be transferred down from the ratio at which you record it to the range of human hearing. And they all specialize in different parts. So they are a sort of a microcosm of the way human beings, separated out from each other, began learning different languages and began specializing in different things.
Oh, this is fascinating. So this is in your new piece, in your series.
Yes, this would be in Myths, Magic and Monsters, including a few other extraordinary things. I mean, we also have a whole series about snakes, serpents. This is a land of the Naga and of the snake in mythology and in fact, of man-eating snakes, and of the most poisonous snakes, for instance, the sea snakes. And there is an island in the Banda Sea, which is a breeding ground of sea snakes, which of course is the most venomous snake on the planet. There's enough venom in the bite of one sea snake to kill 70 people.
Oh, I'd heard that.
But they're sweethearts. You can dive amongst them. They're curious. They'll knock their little faces against your faceplate. They'll play with the bubbles in your... But you've got to go to this volcanic island in the heart of the Banda Sea to experience this.
Well, this is very difficult to leave this discussion. Dr. Blair, thank you.
Pleasure.
First of all, thank you very much. We're going to see some of myths, magic, and monsters, so you'll get to see these exciting things. Oh, it's great.